Good evening. We're preparing today for a orientation session. This means that I will guide you through the course of IGCSE Chemistry. The main focus here is going to be for Cambridge IGCSE, but the instructions are applicable for Edexcel or Cambridge. But as I told you, the main focus is going to be IGCSE Chemistry Cambridge because I believe it is way easier than that of Edexcel. So let me show you the main things we're going to be doing today. I'll start with dates, meaning like starting dates, exam date. Then we'll look at the assessment, meaning the tests, quizzes, and so on. How do we communicate? Me, students, me, and parents, study tips. That means like, how would you study the subject? Because there's always like a special way to study chemistry, just different than studying other subjects. Adding to this, we will look at the exam papers. It show you like how many marks they're allocated for each exam paper. And lastly, we'll look at the fees of the course. At any moment, when you have questions, just raise your hand. Or if you have a question you don't want to speak, you can always write me something in the chat box. All right, let's start with planning. So this is the master plan for the subject. I always like to start with the target. Probably the target for everyone here is to score the highest possible grade. Now, we need to find like the best way to get to this target. So what are the steps we should be taking to get to our target? There are 4 steps. And also we need to have a proper timeline on how we get to the target, because we need to do this on weekly basis, monthly basis, term, meaning like by December, how much should be done, and the annual or the yearly target. That means from now until May 2025. Plus, it's very helpful at each one of those steps, like every week, every month, and so on, that we have, like, we keep in track, we get feedback on how much progress we're making. So let's get to first day important dates. Now, we're going to start Sunday of September. So we will have classes Sunday, Wednesday. The Sunday class is meant for like instructions, theory, plus I usually solve the more direct questions on Sunday, those questions that will help you to learn the content. And on Wednesday, like once you revised and solved the homework, Wednesday we will pick those harder questions and we will solve them together. Every Wednesday, to the end of the class, we will be having a quiz. So that's going to be like our weekly target to get one topic out of the way, get a quiz about it. And then every month, meaning let's say we started on the 1st of September, the last Wednesday of each month about all these topics that we've done this month. So that's going to be like the monthly target of us. Again, it's very helpful to combine different topics together. So let's say we took a topic about matter, we took another one about atoms. So it's very important in chemistry to link up different topics together, because most of the exam questions don't ask you about a specific lesson. They ask you about different topics and how could you possibly link up these topics together. Then the second important date is in December. By December, that's like the 25th of December, we'll hopefully be done with 60% of the subject. The chemistry is like not as long as other IGCSE subjects. It's very feasible to be done with 60% of chemistry by the end of December. Then in Jan, once we return back after the New Year holiday, we'll be having our first mock exam. So that test here on Wednesday will cover 60% of chemistry. We still have time now because the exam it's in May. So we still have time until March. By the first week of March, we'll be done with chemistry. So chemistry will be done by that time. From here onwards, we have March, entire March, April, a couple of weeks in May. we'll be working on full past papers. So we'll be solving full exam papers. That will be the Wednesday class. And the Sunday class will be like trying to do that skill of linking topics together. So I usually, on those classes, the revision classes, other than the full past papers, I usually do like mind maps, long questions, all these things that will help us to link those chemistry topics with one another. If you have questions, just open your mic or raise your hand again. So this is our first part. We've talked about the important dates. Well, now to the second part about the communication. So how are we meant to communicate, me and the students and with the parents? Usually there is a dedicated, I've improved it a lot since last year. So that's how it looked like. I'll send the link to each student and parents. And once you click the app, you would get to the subject. In our case, it's going to be chemistry. You insert your number, and then you get like all the info about your latest quizzes, tests, and so on. Progress in general is very helpful to look at your progress on weekly basis, twice a week or once on every weekend. So you can see how far or how much you have done and your progress overall. This is about the communication. We're also going to talk about the exam papers. I'm talking here about Cambridge. So we have 3 exam papers. It's paper 2, paper 6, paper 4. If you've done any other science subject, you'll find that they're always the same names. Let's start with paper 4. Paper 4 is worth 50% of your overall. Paper 2 is worth 30%, and paper 6 is worth 20%. Now, obviously, the large amount of marks is for paper 4, but it's not right to have most of the focus on paper 4 because those 50% are the harder 50%. You've got very easy 20% that you need to work on from the beginning of the year. Paper 6 is one of the easiest, but it is like a skill. And like to develop a skill, you need time. And that's why you need to start with the practical paper 6 at the beginning of the year. So that's something you have to keep in mind. You need to work on from the beginning of the year because many students I've seen, because it's 20%, they think I'm just going to keep it to the end, couple of months before the exam, I'll get it all done. But that's very wrong. You can't secure those 20% unless you start from the beginning. So again, your total mark for chemistry is 200. So you need the mark you will find at the end is out of 200. As I told you, those are percentages. Paper 2 is going to be worth 60. Paper 4 will be worth 100. And paper 6 will be worth 40. So let me show you how is it like for each one of those exam papers. Let me start with paper 2. It's a multiple choice paper. You get 40 questions, 40 marks, but remember, your total is 200. So paper 2, each question here is worth 1.5. That's the largest marks for, not as a percentage, no, per question or per mark in paper 2 is worth the largest chunks from your overall. It's the trickiest. You ask me which one is the hardest one? It's paper 2. You should always, when you're studying, don't start with paper 2 because it's very tricky with it. But the best thing about it is always the very last exam. So in June, you have a whole month to prepare for it. That's paper 2. Paper 4, it's 80 marks, 7 questions. It's all written, no multiple choice here. Each mark here is worth 1.25 from your 200. You're following again. You multiply that 40 times 1.5, you get how much you should be able to score from your 200. That's for paper 4. In the paper 6 one, the easiest one, it's 40 marks, just 4 questions, And each mark is worth 1 mark. Easy. Okay? A star. Usually these are the grade boundaries from last year, 2023. So you can see here, 44 is worth an A star. So this is like the numerical grading system here. People who scored 144 out of 200, which is not very difficult, they could score an A star. Most universities, they consider the 8 and 9 as an A star. It's not difficult at all. I think it's quite easy to score that grade. All right. So this is about the exam papers and how the marks are allocated. How do you study the subject? And I always believe in this quote. I show this quote to my students every year, which is, it's not about how much time you study. It's not about how intelligent and smart you are. It's just like the way you study. All these IGCSE subjects, they're meant for all students. They're for normal students. You don't need to be super smart. You just need to know how you could study. So what would be the best way you could study this subject? The lesson. Our lessons here is going to be online. It's not easy to keep focusing for a long period online. Sometimes 1 hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. You should be able to do follow-up. Always get your notes, annotate, highlight the note. As I'm speaking, or as your teacher is speaking in general, just annotate, highlight, keep yourself engaged. If you just keep watching like this, you would get fed up, you would fall asleep, you can't focus. So keep yourself busy. That's the best thing you could do during the lesson. All right. I usually go by the notes step by step. You'll find me just as if I'm going section by section. So do the same. Get your notes, highlight the things that I'm talking about, add extra notes for what I'm saying, and you would stay engaged. I always try to help you here by popping up questions. Like, for instance, try this. Can you answer this? So this is like typical of what I do in the class. I pop up a question and I ask my students to try. So let's see how many of you are following. So how much is paper 4 worth as a percentage? So a question like this would pop up on the screen. You just need to pick the percentage. This way, I can keep track of who's answering. Plus, you stay engaged this way, right? So I do this like 10 times in the class, beginning, middle, and at the end. So I could feel like how much engagement there is in the class. So that's during the lesson. Also, the quiz at the end of the class would also, you feel like responsible, because at the end of the class, there's a small quiz. So you can feel that you need to follow up during the lesson because there is a quiz at the end of the class. Then right after the class, it's the revision. It's super important to revise a couple of days within those 2 days after the lesson. So let's say we took the lesson on Sunday evening, Monday, Tuesday, at the latest, you should revise. It's scientifically proved period of 48 hours after the lesson is the best time to revise. If you wait longer, you'll forget. Every time you go to bed, every time you fall asleep at night, you forget some of what you studied. So I always advise, like, you have 4, 5, 6 IGCSE subjects. Don't only make a lesson timetable. No, make revision timetable. So you have chemistry on Sunday, I revise chemistry on Monday. You have physics on Tuesday, you revise physics on Wednesday, and so on. If you revise like within 2 days of the class, you will almost remember everything you have taken in the lesson. If you wait a week, look how much you forget. You almost forget everything. After a week of the lesson, you forgot everything. So somewhere here or here is the best time to revise so you remember what you have studied. So revision is only going to take you like half an hour. I always ask my students to spend little time in the notes, 30 minutes just reading what you took in the lesson, and more of practice. So grab the past paper book and solve the questions related to it. That means you solve the homework within those 2 days. So again, let's say you spent half an hour just reading the notes, then 90 minutes, 1 hour and a half, solving exam questions related to the lesson, and you will remember almost everything you have studied. studied. All right. And as I told you, the best way to solve is in this order. Don't start with the paper 2. No, do it in that way. Do first paper 4, because it helps you to revise the context. Then do paper 6, and lastly, finish up with paper 2, because it takes a lot of understanding to answer those multiple choice questions. All right. So now you have revised, you practiced, and you read the notes within 48 hours, as we have agreed. You're going to submit the homework, and then you'll receive a feedback on all the things you need to improve. Once you solve the homework, you get it back within a couple of days. Go over the things that you got wrong. Ask questions. Sometimes while you're solving, like you're solving the homework and this question is impossible to you to solve, just send it to me or send it on the WhatsApp group. There's always somebody, either me or my assistants, there to help you with the questions. Right after that, we would have, remember, that's the Sunday class. You solved by Tuesday. Now we will have the Wednesday class. This is where I solve the hardest question, those questions that you couldn't solve, or those questions that most of the students are asking about, right? Then you'll have a quiz. Remember that quiz you'll get on Wednesday, the end of the class. And lastly, as I told you, there is test at the end of every month. So your first test is going to be the 12th of September. You would have also office hours. Those office hours are dedicated for the students who are underachievers, students who are having trouble. So you spend 1 hour or 2 hours just trying to figure out, trying to improve those weak points. And during those tests, as I told you, we would have a mock test. That mock test will be in Jan. That's the first mock test. And then we're going to have a couple of mock tests, once in March and one in April. Why do you really need those mock tests? Because those are the ones will help you to pace yourself. Everybody who has studied can score almost a full mark in chemistry. It's just like you need to be able to solve on time. That the skill takes time to get to that skill. So that's why you need those mock tests, so you could pace yourself, so you solve within the allocated time. Tell me again if you have any question. Let's get to the fees. The class is worth just $6.5 or in any currency. The next thing we're going to do here is just going to have an overview over chemistry, so you know what topics you're going to study, what are the topics that take more time, what are the challenging topics, and hopefully we'll be done within 10 minutes. Okay. Very first lesson in chemistry is something you've probably heard about from year 7, year 8, which is states of matter, solid, liquid, gas. Then we will learn how you could purify materials, substances. Example, how could you get fresh water out of seawater, or how could you separate water from sand and water? Then we will learn about atoms. Again, it's something you've probably heard about: electrons, protons, neutrons. And then that's like the first part, the matter part. This is roughly 10% of the entire chemistry. Then comes the second part. This talks about how particles, those particles we took in the first part, how do they join? Because like water is H2O, meaning there's hydrogen and oxygen. How do these join and make a bond with one another? All right. So these bonds are different. Sometimes it's ionic, covalent, sometimes occurs among metals, right? So those matter and bonding is what we're going to be doing in September. Just going to take us 1 month and we'll be done with these. Then comes a topic that requires calculation. So we have something called the mole concept and chemical equations. This requires some math skills. And the mole concept is one of the long topics. It's going to take us 3 lessons to finish. Every time you see that star, that means a long lesson. Stoichiometry is going to take us roughly 2 to 3 weeks. And then we get to physical chemistry. I call this like physical chemistry because it's like electricity and chemistry put together. So that's another one. Electrolysis is another topic. It's going to take us 2 lessons. And then now we're getting near December. So by the end of December, we'll be right here at the rate of reaction. So here we study energetics, means how temperature and energy changes during chemical reactions. And here we're going to find how fast chemical reactions are. Again, that's us getting near 60% of chemistry by December. Jan, we will start with something called equilibrium. And then here, still in Jan, we're going to do acid and bases, talking about acid and alkali, if you like to call it. Identification of gases, ions, meaning like I show you a blue or green chemical, and you need to identify which chemical it's talking about here. It's quite interesting. We're going to do metals, how you get iron, how you get aluminum. We'll work on the periodic table, right? So these are the things we're going to be doing entire Jan. And then now we're getting to Feb is like the last month of us doing content. We're going to do like a topic that they have introduced in 2023. Like our chemistry syllabus has been changed 2023. It's applicable till 2025. 2026 is not going to be much different. There's no changes in chemistry in the near future. Yeah, so that topic they've introduced in 2023 talks about pollution, air quality. And the last topic of us for this year is called organic. It's quite interesting because this is the chemistry of us. It's like a link between chemistry and biology because you study about petroleum, you study about vinegar, candies, plastic, so all the things. So this is the last topic, and that's the one we'll be doing in Feb. Now, from here onwards, it's just going to be revision. So March, April, first week of May, that's the time where we're going to have 9 weeks of revision. If you have questions, just ask me now. If you don't have questions, then I'll see you next time.